Oh, what could you do at Devil's Den podcast? And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has left Manchester United in the wake of the 4-1 defeat at Vicarage Road. And it's sad because, yeah, he's a club legend. Nobody wanted to see it in this way. But yeah, United decision, what's your sort of general overview of the situation? Because, as I say, I think we're all feeling quite down about that.
Yeah, so I think we talked about before we started, we're going to kind of break it into sections. So we'll talk about what comes next later. Just my reaction to Ollie leaving, it's a mixed emotion. There's two parts to it. The first one is relief because I think I've been saying since the 5-0 loss to Liverpool that I think United should make a change in manager. So I think it's the right decision. It's one that I've been pushing for a couple of weeks now. Having said that, I didn't expect to feel quite as sad as I ended up feeling. I knew I would feel something, but this was more than I thought, just because, Ollie represented so much of what we loved about United. The dream was that after Moyes, Van Gaal, and Mourinho, he just slid in and we could just kind of snap our fingers and go back to the Ferguson era. And it didn't happen. That's kind of the regrettable part about it. The thing that stands out to me though is it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. And I think the club is better for him having been here. My life is better for having have seen it. I know some people will complain that he didn't win anything, so he doesn't really count as a successful United boss. For me, he's my favorite post Sir Alex manager, purely because of the kind of the love for my club, the connection that I got with United, I didn't get with any of the other managers post Sir Alex. And so for me, he's always going to be remembered, welcome back fondly. It's the right decision, but it's obviously a difficult one because of what all he means to all of us. And yeah, I can't really say any more than that.
Yeah, and I think my sort of, well, not fear because I've already seen it, is people sort of trying to rewrite history and paint Ollie as you say, as some sort of huge failure. But that's just plain wrong for me because when he came in, we were absolutely awful.
I feel like
You
a
know,
lot of it is going to depend on what comes next in a sense. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I mean, like, if the next manager comes in and wins things using 8 out of 11 of all these players, then all of a sudden we view him as the man who set up our era of success in retrospect. If the
yeah,
next man comes in and all of a sudden has to buy 8 new players before they do anything, then it kind of makes him more of a footnote. So I think it really depends on what comes next that it'll frame how all these era is remembered. But it's important to remember, if you look at the cumulative points table from the day Ollie came in to the day Ollie left, we had the third most points in the Premier League after Man City and Liverpool. And that's important to remember because people will say, he finished sixth in his first season. Well, he only took charge of half the season. People will say, we're seventh right now as of the current situation. And yeah, that's true. But again, he only took 12 games this season. If you look at the 2 full years he had, he finished second and third. And on average, across his entire era, he had the third most points, which is quite respectable. It's not good enough for United, but it's very respectable. So the idea that he's a complete failure is just wrong. It's an agenda pushed by a media and a deluded section of the fan base that thinks unless you have complex diagrams and you live in a dungeon with tactical boards, then you can't be a competent manager. And that's just not true.
Arteta, is that you?
that's exactly what came into my mind. But yeah, we've sort of given our views on how Solskjaer was not a failure at all. I think we can all agree with that. But yeah, Darth, what's your sort of reaction to it?
It's a weird one. Like I'm still a little bit like heartbroken because of it. Because of all managers, I wanted him to work out the most because of who he is. He has that connection with the fans. He understands. He is a fan. Right. He is a huge fan of the club. He knows what it's like. He's been there. He's seen it all. And yet, through it all, he still put the club first. He didn't use it for personal gain. He didn't use it for himself. He did what he thought was best for the club. And he was the first manager to ever get back-to-back Champions League spots. I don't think Moyes, Van Gaal, or Mourinho got back-to-back Champions League spots.
Yeah, via the league. Mourinho qualified 2 years by winning the Europa League and then finishing second, but not through the league.
all right, via the league, right? But when we won the Europa League with Jose, he threw the league. He caught the league off and went, nope, and then concentrate on Europa. But yeah, as Sheridan said, we'll have to see where it goes from here. Hey, we could win 3 Premier Leagues on the bounce using, as Sheridan said, 8 of all these players, and you go, oh. But then a lot of people try and spin that and go, well, it was Ollie that was being bad. But no, I read a tweet someone had said that maybe some managers are really good at just building a squad, and maybe it can't take them that ceiling. Maybe they reached a ceiling of building a squad. Like
that was a thread from the summer I retweeted from the account.
Yeah.
Great account on Twitter actually called @expectedchelsea. He was comparing Lampard and Ollie's work in the summer, and he was making the point that whatever happened with Ollie this season, he was a success because of how he rebuilt the squad.
Yeah. I knew I'd seen it. I didn't know if you had retweeted it, but yeah. Anyway, I just feel weird about it. I'm a little bit upset.
Yeah, I think we all are, to be honest. It's really sad to be sacked like that. I mean, I know it's like sort of a mutual agreement officially, but yeah, he was saying yesterday. I think he thought he could turn it around and stuff. So it's clearly, pretty much. But yeah, we know that Michael Carrick is going to take over now for at least the next few games, for interim manager. What is you guys' thoughts on that? Because he's not as experienced as Ollie. I think I'd probably rather Ollie take control of our next few games while we try and get an interim manager. But Resurgent, what's your thoughts on it?
I think people are underplaying the value that just releasing the pressure, kind of the valve opening it can have when you're changing manager like this. So I think that relieving Ollie of his duties is the right decision, regardless of what comes next, purely because just him not being there, in a sense, is going to lighten the mood a little bit around Carrington, even if the staff is largely the same. So I think that it's the right decision. I wouldn't have kept Ollie for those matches while we were waiting to find an interim. What I will say is, like you said, Michael Carrick is very inexperienced. We don't really know how he's going to do. I wasn't super impressed with anything I'd heard about his coaching in the background. Like, we hadn't had any really high-level reports about him or anything that suggested he was a boy genius. I am of the opinion that his stint shouldn't last more than 2 games at the most. Ideally, not more than 1. We should ideally have a new manager in place after the Villarreal game. Like, if we were effective as a club, we have all of today, all of tomorrow, and then within 48 hours, we should be able to source an interim manager, and they should be in the crowd against Villarreal, and then they should take charge on Wednesday morning. That's my opinion. Having said that, I can understand it might take an extra game, but not longer than that for Carrick for me. I do also think that some of the backlash about him keeping all these backroom staff is unfair for now, because while I think the club need to clear out the coaching staff when the new manager comes in, or when the interim manager comes in at some point, like, I don't think this should be the coaching staff next season. But I think that if you sack the entire coaching staff, who is going to take charge? Like, would it be Darren Fletcher with the under-18s coaches? I mean, it just doesn't seem like
Eric Ramsey and Darren Fletcher.
What was that?
Eric Ramsey and Darren Fletcher.
Yeah, even Eric Ramsey's one of the first team coaches. So theoretically, if you're like, sack everyone, you want Ramsey gone too. So you end up in this situation where it's whoever is the under-18s boss assisting Darren Fletcher, and I don't think that's the right way to go. I think as long as this situation is like what happened with, I don't know if you guys remember, Chris Woods and Phil Neville were retained from David Moyes' coaching staff to assist Ryan Giggs, but then they left the club when Louis van Gaal came in. As long as it's like that, it's fine. The issue would be if it's like Carrick and McKenna staying under Ollie and they're here 3 years later.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Ollie said he thinks they're world-class coaches, but I don't think you can look at this season and say, oh, they're some of the best coaches in the world.
Oh man, I saw an article from Mark Ogden on ESPN, and he said that the club, about at some point during the season, had intimated to all the players weren't super happy with the quality of the coaching, and that he had their complete backing to make any changes to the coaching staff that he wanted. And he said, no, I have world-class coaches and I don't want to make any changes right now. Again, it's Mark Ogden, not Rob Dawson from ESPN, so take it with a pinch of salt. Having said that, I can see that being true because the club has backed Ollie to make staffing changes in the past. Around this time last year, actually, he made some changes. So with that understanding, I really think, and we mentioned it on the podcast about a month or two ago, that if he had done that, I genuinely think he could have made it to the end of the season and left on more respectable terms if he had made changes to coaching staff. But I think his loyalty to coaches, his loyalty to players, ultimately led to a situation where to break out of the rut, we had to let him go. And it's a sad situation. And, you know, the interim situation is not great. The interim, I should say, is not great with Carrick. But, you know, there's not a lot we can do given the club didn't do their due diligence and planning. Like we said in the last podcast, they should have been doing. And given the situation, it's the best we can hope for.
Yeah, and to be fair, we weren't complaining about coaching much last season and the season before. So, you know, I'm just trying to look at it from, you know, Ollie's point of view and the people who think the coaches are good enough. And I agree with that.
The point I would make there, though, Reese, is if you look at Sir Alex Ferguson, you know, he was here for 26 years. Look how many assistant managers he had, right? He had Steve McLaren, and then he had, so I'm missing some of the earlier ones, but just off the top of my head, he had Steve McLaren, he had Carlos Queiroz, he had what's his name, Mike Phelan, he had Rennie Muhlenstein at one point as a coach doing a lot of the tactical work. So the coaching staff wasn't static. So just because it worked a year ago or 2 years ago doesn't mean you have to persist with it. And I really think there was scope for him to make changes, and that was a big misstep. And I think that shortened his tenure by about 7 or 8 months.
So anyway, Sir Alex Ferguson only had 7 number 2s.
Well, 7 number 2, 26 years. We're talking about what a change every 3 years or so. So on average, right about now.
Yeah,
yeah,
because he had Archie Knox with his first one, Brian Kidd, Steve McLaren for 2 years. Jimmy Ryan was kind of here and there. I've got to list up Carlos Queiroz because he came 2002, left and then came back. Walter Smith, R.I.P. Walter Smith, great man. And then Mike Phelan. That was it.
There's a concept that I think some managers have even talked about, including I think maybe Pep Guardiola, that after a certain number of years, the players just need to hear a different voice. And the issue is in the modern football landscape where like Pochettino, Rodgers, Ten Hag, these guys do a lot of their own coaching, you end up changing the manager. But if you have a hands-off manager who's purely a manager and delegates the coaching, like Ollie, like Sir Alex Ferguson, you know, like by all accounts, Laurent Blanc, Zinedine Zidane, these guys kind of operate in that manner. If you've got that kind of manager, then what you can do is you can change the assistants underneath you. Pep's already changed assistants at Man City. There's scope to operate in that way, but the problem is after 3 years, if you keep the same assistants, you keep the same manager, then you end up in the same situation as the manager coaches, which is you end up changing every 3 to 4 years.
It gets repetitive with the same coaches, I guess. I guess like the same assistant. You have to freshen up. You have to keep with, because football evolves every year. Every year there's a new thing. There's if you don't have some German fucking name for a style of play, you know what I mean? It just evolves all the time, and you have to really keep with it, because if you don't, you get left behind. And we've been evidently left behind.
I don't even think it's about the tactical trends necessarily. I just think it's about players getting tired after 3 years of hearing the same people. You could be cutting edge, and I still think this would happen after 3 to 4 years if you don't change your coaching staff at least. Yeah,
you got to freshen it up, right?
Yeah, so we got a few questions from Twitter. So thanks to the guys who posted the questions. So this is from Eric Nilsson. Do the players accept any blame from the last few weeks from their season? I mean, personally, yeah, I think you have to look at the players, and you have to look at the manager and the coach as well. Because you see what Bruno was saying yesterday. He was saying, you've got to blame all of us, not just Ollie, not just the coaches. I think it's a collective thing, because you can't look at the players and say, oh yeah, they've been, because if you look at Maguire, he's been pretty awful. If you look at Shaw, he's not been himself. If you look at, pretty much any player that's been playing regularly, they've been pretty shit, if I'm being honest. So yeah, Dav, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was gonna allude to the Bruno thing where it was to the crowd, like it's not just Ollie. Blame all of us. We're all in this together. Like, and that's fighting. I like that fight from a player, but yeah, Maguire's been really poor. But then it's the manager to go, all right, you've been poor. I'm gonna drop you, but he hasn't dropped him. Luke Shaw's been really poor, and it's down to the manager to go, you're in poor form. I'm going to drop you for a couple of games, so you can find your bearing. Maybe we've touched upon it. Maybe it's a Euro hangover. I don't know. But if a player is in poor form, you would usually rotate. Bailly's suicidal. You got Victor Lindelof, who's probably the best backup centre-back there is, right? Because he's reliable. He doesn't get injured very rarely.
And he always puts in at least a 5 out of 10, usually not more than an 8. So it's kind of that 6, 7 out of 10 guy every week.
Right. Him and Varane, that will hold out for a little while, and Varane can cover Tellez when he goes missing. But yeah, it is down to the manager, but it's also down to the players sometimes. It's a mixture of both. And I'm sure Ollie has seen Maguire in Shaw massively out of form. But yeah, the players will definitely know 100% this is on them.
I think the case of you live by the sword, you die by the sword. What happened is Ollie, for the last 2 years, has been relying upon a core group of about maybe 15 players that he trusts and he rotates between, and he doesn't really use the rest of his squad, which is fine when most of those 15 are on form. Like last season when we finished second, Luke Shaw was in the form of his career. Harry Maguire was getting great praise all the time. Bruno Fernandes was in excellent form. Marcus Rashford, when he was fit, was doing quite well. So you went, and Cavani was playing well when he came in. Other than Martial, basically most of the core group was in good form last season. So it worked pretty well. The problem is when you kind of live by that group of 15 players. What happens when that group of 15 players goes out of form? Like Bruno Fernandes yesterday, I love the gesture that he made at the end of the game. I think that's the mentality that all players should have, that, don't blame the coaches, don't blame the manager, don't blame each individual player, blame the collective. It's all of us. I'm a big fan. I remember when Louis van Gaal was here in press conferences, he used to talk a lot about how when someone would prompt him to praise an individual player, he'd say, well, no, it's the whole team. And I think that attitude should apply when things go well and go badly, that it's the whole team. And I really think that when Ollie made the decision to stick with those 15 players, the issue is now if you rotate somebody in, they're not match fit, they're out of form, whatever the case is, they're maybe a little bit mad at you for not playing. All these other factors come in. It makes it difficult for him to rotate when he needs to, because he didn't when it was optional. And I think the management decisions exacerbated the issues created by the players, but obviously the players have to take responsibility because Harry Maguire has been awful this season. I'm a huge defender of his. I wanted us to sign Harry Maguire when Mourinho was looking at him the year before. I'm a huge Harry Maguire fan, but having said that, I think his general, I think he's been poor at leadership this season. I think he's been poor as a player this season. I think he's just been absolutely awful since he got back from the World Cup. And it's disgraceful that our captain let the manager down. Luke Shaw was getting so much critical acclaim. Same thing applies to him.
It was the Euros, not the World Cup.
Sorry, the Euros. My bad. Thank you. I appreciate it. I was thinking about the World Cup because of Mourinho before. Yeah. Sorry, the Euros. I appreciate it. But yeah, so with Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, prominent examples. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka's taken a step back this season. He hasn't had like the disaster classes that Shaw and Maguire have dropped, but he's been quietly subpar. You look at the midfield, McTominay and Fred, at least were defensively reliable in the past. We're shipping multiple goals a game with them in midfield this season. Jadon Sancho's not hit the ground running. Bruno Fernandes has been off form. Cristiano Ronaldo plays well in some games and is anonymous in others, but we knew that when we signed him. It's just a bad situation. And the problem is when you're not already saying, okay, Donnie, I'm going to give you a game every second or third game. Alex, Tellez, you can play every second or third game. When you're not
Champions League games, play them in Champions League games.
Exactly. another example of this is it's not even just, and the idea that it's exacerbated by the management. Harry Maguire, when he was coming back from injury against Leicester City, the Decker report was he had 1 day of training and then he started over Eric Bailly. He'd been out for a month. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And yet, for some reason, Ollie went with that decision. So I think the players have a responsibility, the manager has a responsibility, the coaching staff had a responsibility. I think the Glazers, Ed Woodward, Richard Arnold, John Murtaugh all have a responsibility in the sense that this went on a month longer than it should have. There are definitely the fact that we're looking at a managerial change after an international break rather than during it. There's enough blame to go around for everyone. No one comes out of this blame free.
100%. I echo that. So from Jerry Santos, our next person who's got a question, shout out to him because he watches everyone. And
you missed a question.
Sorry, before we get to that, can we do
we'll
Brandon?
Get to that.
I think that one's going to be a more time consuming one from Jerry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We're going into that first, or
here, you know what? I'll just read it off. So Brandon's question was Brandon Colantonio. He said, "Do you reckon Ollie will make a return to management at Molde?" It's a pretty quick one, so it's not really United related. But what do you guys think?
I think he'll take some time off and wait for the Norway job.
Agreed. That's what I think is going to happen as well.
Yeah, he'll just take the Norway job.
It's going to be kind of like Zidane, essentially, what he's doing right now. He's going to sit out in his home country, and then after the World Cup, take the Norway job.
Yeah. He'll take some time away, rest, recover.
Okay. Yeah, he'll want to do that because I'm sure he's pretty mentally drained after these 3 years. I was going to get to that last because I knew it was going to be so short, but yeah. From Jerry Santos, as I was going to say, big shout out to him because he watches every podcast. He's a great guy too. So, what should be our recruitment strategy for our next manager? There's loads of sort of candidates. Obviously, Ten Hag at Ajax has been rumored. We'll probably be asked about that today because they're playing right now. I don't know.
Playing in 15 minutes after our recording time, which is why we're recording right now so we can watch the Ajax game.
Yeah, big brain.
I remember.
That before we literally recorded this, what's his name? Sky Sports Seth, Sheath,
Dharmesh Sheth, yeah.
Yeah, he came out and said Ten Hag would be 100% interested in the United job in the summer.
Yep.
Yeah. We should have done
also intimated Pochettino was the first choice candidate, and it's Sky Sports, so take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, we should have done due diligence beforehand. Even if Ollie wasn't going to be sacked, you still should have been a little bit talk to other managers, going, all right, if it goes tits up, would you be interested? Right? It's what smarter clubs do.
Any company in the world does. If you look at like any major corporation, which United is a business to the Glazers, for every like executive vice president or like vice president level employee, they've got a plan in place that if this person leaves, here's who we're going to bring in their place. Except at United, for some reason, we don't have those plans. So Ed Woodward resigned, 6-7 months ago, and he's still here. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just left, and the club had no idea what to do. We just don't.
Isn't Woodward stay until April now? April, May, end of the season.
It's not been announced, but that's been rumored, yeah.
So Ten Hag and Van der Sar, yeah?
We hope so, but it looks like Richard Arnold's going to take that CEO job.
I don't know regarding the Richard Arnold stuff, because he's been here that long. Why haven't they just given him it? That's what I'm confused at.
They don't want to push Ed Woodward out the door, and he's still here.
Nah, I think
can't replace me if I don't leave.
I think there's more to it than that.
We'll see.
Yeah. Anyway.
But anyways, as far as the manager goes, Barth, what were you saying?
Forget what. Where was it? Just about we didn't have a succession plan, right? We should always have. Hell, we should have had one for Louis van Gaal, but we didn't. We went from his possession style play to Jose Mourinho counter defensive football to then Ole who press and fitness football. It's went from here to here like a fucking crisscross, right? And you just go, what?
So here's the thing with that. I honestly had a little bit of hope when I first saw the short list that Simon Stone and Fabrizio Romano were reporting on about 2 weeks ago or so. that it was Eric Ten Hag, Maurizio Pochettino, and Brendan Rodgers, because for me, those are three managers that are similar enough. There are differences, but essentially they're possession-based football managers, attacking football, young managers. They bring through the youth. They try to stay at a club for as long as they can. I think that's the right blueprint that the club should be approaching. So I was quite satisfied with that list. And then today, yesterday, when the news was breaking that Ollie was going to go, there was some stuff about us potentially approaching Zidane, and he's not interested. And he's just a completely different type of manager to the other three. So that, to me, screams that someone is deviating from the plan. Now, the Independent said that it was Ed Woodward who was interested in getting Zidane in right now, and it wasn't possible. But what I will say is Ed Woodward is known for going for the latest shiny thing on the market. So doesn't surprise me that he really wanted to go for Zidane. I think John Murtaugh and the football people are the one drawing up the short list of three managers who play pretty similar football and are kind of trying to pursue that. And I think that's the way the club should be going. I think Brendan Rodgers, I think that the fan base underrates him. I think that he's a decent manager. I don't think he's one that's going to win you a Premier League or a Champions League. So he's not my preferred choice, but I think he is at least that type of manager. For me, I look at it as Ten Hag 1A, Pochettino 1B, and then I've got number 3 Graham Potter, number 4 probably Brendan Rodgers, I guess would be there if I had to put him on the list somewhere. But I want that kind of manager. I don't want us to go for, there was Luis Enrique was linked, and he's a decent manager as well. He's got a very good pedigree. He's won the Champions League, 3 La Liga title.
What a treble with Barcelona.
Yeah, 1 Champions League, 2 La Liga titles, 3 Copa del Reys. I looked it up earlier.
Hey.
He's got a great resume with that, but at Roma, he didn't do quite so well before that in his career. At Celta Vigo, I think he did quite well. So he's got a mixed record. Julien Lopetegui has been linked. I'm generally a fan of his management, but I'm not sure about it for this level of a job.
No.
I think he wouldn't really be on my list necessarily for this job. So there's a lot of names out there, but I think the club would be well served going for one of Pochettino or Ten Hag. Those are like what I would call the A and the A- candidates.
You mentioned Luis Enrique.
There was Sky Sports had mentioned it, and then Fabrizio Romano quickly tweeted a quote from Luis Enrique today. He was like, "Is it April Fool's Day?" when someone asked him if he was interested in the
Yeah, I don't think he's leaving Spain anytime
No.
soon.
So what happened, for those who don't know what Luis Enrique was, he was the Spain manager. He was going to be the manager at the last World Cup, I believe, or was it the Euros? He was one of the last tournaments.
Euros, I think.
Euros, okay. It was one of the last 2 tournaments. He was going to be the manager, and then his daughter passed away. She was quite young. And so what happened was Luis Enrique resigned. One of his assistants got promoted to manager. And then at the end of that cycle, when he was like a year later, when he felt ready, they promoted him back to coming into the management role, and he took the job over again. So he's clearly very dedicated towards the Spain job. He wants to be the manager at a tournament. And I don't think that's going to be something that we can just say, oh, pay Spain 15 million, we can get him. He really wants to be there. It's like one of his lifelong objectives. He is a Spaniard. So I really don't think it's been, given the World Cup's in December, not the summer, that means the timing just doesn't work out for us. So Luis Enrique, I don't think is a realistic candidate. But even if he was, again, I think that younger manager shortlist is probably the way that I would go for United.
I want Julian Nagelsmann, but you're never going to get him out of Bayern.
I'm trying to be realistic, but obviously Nagelsmann.
Yeah, you'd never get Nagelsmann. I'm a big fan of Enrique. I like his style of play, and his tactic. His favorite tactic is 4-3-3, but when they attack, it turns into a 3-4-3. It's really weird. I'm a big fan of his, but I think Ten Hag would be my choice, just because of how they worded the statement when Ollie was set. They spoke about an interim, so they're waiting for something. They're waiting. They have an eye on.
It seems like it's one or two things, right? They're either waiting to buy out Ten Hag in the summer, or they're waiting for PSG to sack Pochettino because he doesn't make it to the final of the Champions League, and then they get him for free, which I think is the more likely option because the Glazers have never paid more than 500K for a manager. So it seems unlikely to me that they'd go pay 5, 6, whatever, 10 million that you'd have to pay for Ten Hag. But either way, I'd be happy with either of those two managers. I think Ten Hag edges it for me. just because I think his style of play is more defined. I think that relative to the resources he's had, he's enjoyed great success. And so I would be excited to see it. Plus, I'm a big fan of the Dutch school of managers. Despite the football being boring as all hell, I even like Louis van Gaal. So I would be very happy with Eric.
I wanted season 3 of Louis van Gaal.
Same. That was me too. I didn't want to sack him for Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
He's the only manager to this day out of the 4 that we've sacked now who I wanted kept at the time he was sacked.
Yeah, I wanted to see season 3. I wanted to see what he could do. But here we are.
Yeah. No.
Reese, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah. I think the most likely is Mauricio Pochettino. I think that's probably would be my pick as well. He's not doing great at PSG at the moment, obviously. He's not doing awful, but I think any manager would struggle to fit Messi, Mbappe, Neymar.
Hold on. Just going to be very clear. We're saying he's not doing great at PSG at the moment. PSG are 12 points clear at the top of the league.
To be fair, I could fucking manage at PSG and still win the league.
I get it, but hold on. You say that, but Tuchel was second this time last season.
A question though. You don't go from Tuchel to Poch and expect fancy flowing football. They need that in between manager, right? Because Tuchel is really rigid in his system, and you here don't move, you here don't move, and then Poch free flowing football, right? And you don't go from rigid to free flowing.
I think from what I've read, people at PSG said the football under Tuchel was actually a little bit better than sometimes under Pochettino. The issue I think that they're having, though, is how does Pochettino play his high pressing style of football when you've got 3 prima donnas up front with Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe? At United, he'd only really have one in the form of Cristiano Ronaldo. And then you'd have Bruno, Sancho, and Rashford and Greenwood, or not so much Greenwood, but the other 3 are all willing pressers. And so I think his system would suit us a lot more than it suits PSG.
Yep. Plus, there's a lot of politics and stuff at PSG that apparently
it's a basket case of a club. I mean, it's almost unmanageable in a sense.
Did anybody see the what's his name? Who was that guy that
came
out like
Molina? That was ridiculous.
Romain Molina.
Where it was like, there's a lot of corruption at PSG. I could write a book. I'm like,
that guy's articles is funny. His name's Romain Molina because obviously the guy who plays Doc Ock in Spider-Man movies is Alfred Molina.
Yeah,
he kind of had the 8 arms of like stories coming out at the same time.
I woke up like 5 a.m. that day, and I was like, the fuck is going on here?
Let me ask you guys this question then. I think we're all pretty much agreed that it should be either Ten Hag or Pochettino.
How was Sterling missed? Sorry, I've got a City game on, and Sterling missed from like 2 yards.
Me and Darth are leaning a little bit more towards Ten Hag. Reese is leaning a little bit more towards Pochettino. But ultimately, we agree those are 1 and 2. Like, those are clear front runners for this job. So in that case, let me ask you this question. It seems like those guys aren't available till the summer. Who would you bring in as an interim manager? And with this, let me just add, I've been waiting to bring up this tweet the entire time because I have tweeted about Laurent Blanc in the past. He was my choice in 2019.
He's having a stinker in Qatar.
He's having an absolute disaster class. And
so, is this the losses and stuff? Yeah,
that one tweet. So let me give that to you. I've just got it open now. Okay, so what they say is
I know who I want as my interim.
The guy who tweeted this is at CM Winterburn, and he says, in all competitions, Laurent Blanc's Al Rayyan side have lost 7 of their last 10 matches. Immediately before that excellent run began, Blanc side had won a mammoth 1 of 15 matches. Now, bear in mind, this is a side in the Qatar League that has Nzonzi, Brahimi, and James. After taking over, Blanc finished in 3rd place, 1 space lower than the previous season before he arrived, where the club finished 2nd. So we're talking about a manager who is not doing well in Qatar right now, despite, he won the title 3 years in a row at PSG, he won the league with Bordeaux. There's things in his history which suggest that he could be a decent interim, but
the Bordeaux thing is more impressive. The Bordeaux,
But anyways, who did you have in mind, Darth? With that said about Laurent?
All right. Are we memeing or what? Because
honestly,
it's incredibly difficult to choose.
All right. Let's get Big Salmon.
Seriously.
No.
Can we get a serious answer then?
All right. Ralph Ragnick, but give him a promise of either CEO or something afterwards because that's what he wants.
Well, I
Ultimately,
think it's not a CEO. He's on the football side, not the business side.
all right.
You could promise
him-
him Murtaugh's job potentially, but I don't really think the club are interested in that.
But
Mm.
promise him something because that's what he fully wants, right? And I've read into
Yeah, if he did that, he'd
Ragnick.
come in.
Yeah,
The thing I would say
if we
about
promised
Ragnick-
him that, he would
Go
come
on.
in 100%. If we went, all right, once you're finished here and we get our manager, you'll be moved upstairs.
Reese, what do you think?
Yeah, the thing I would say about Ragnick is that he's a proper pressing manager, and I just don't think we can do that with Ronaldo up front, and you can't
Yeah,
drop
that's a concern
Ronaldo.
that I share as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
I know.
I just don't think it would work in terms of style wise. And are there many other options? I don't know
My
because
suggestion is Lucien Favre, who was the Dortmund manager for Jadon Sancho up until midway through last season. I don't rate Lucien Favre highly as a manager. I wanted him sacked at Dortmund for about 18 months before he got fired. So I'm not trying to say he's the greatest manager in the world, but he did consistently get top four. And I think that that's kind of the objective for the rest of the season is make sure whoever comes in can close a 6-point gap, get fourth place, and then also try to win the FA Cup or the
What managers
Champions
are
League.
available right now?
So I would go for Lucien Favre, also because it would help Jadon Sancho integrate into the team better, having a manager that he knows and trusts.
All right, let's have a look at what managers are available.
Bearing in mind we've got 3 minutes to wrap this up.
All right, we got Valverde, who's at Barcelona.
He's not going to be interested in an interim job, and I don't want him permanently.
Setien from Barcelona again.
no,
Not
Andre
really.
Pirlo, Coleman.
we can't say no to every manager, but
So
we want to.
honestly, this is unpopular, but I don't hate the idea of Koeman for 6 months.
Tell you who's actually not bad manager, or you just get sacked because he's absolutely sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. Gattuso is actually a not bad manager for what he's
Club
done.
won't hire him for PR reasons. I'm not going
Yeah.
to get into the off the pitch stuff, but there's no.
Who's Inzaghi? Which one? Simeone or
Simone
Felipe?
Inzaghi is the Inter manager. Hell, if he was still at Lazio, he actually would have been in my top 3 to take the United job. I love.
He's a really fucking good man. I love watching.
So good.
how he
But the
plays.
issue is he's the Inter boss now. He's not going to leave after joining 3 months later.
Yeah, exactly. The Atalanta boss. They play.
Gasperini, again, he's not going to be an interim boss, and I think he's too old to be the permanent choice.
He plays some wild football, and I don't think it'd work in the Premier League ever.
I mean, people said that about Marcelo Bielsa, though. So
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's starting to come off, and I feel that they'll get
yeah, but he's got a
relegated this
lower
year.
quality of player. So you'd think it for like. And the other thing is, we wouldn't need it to work long term. Right now, we're only looking for someone for 6 months. So
Yeah. I think Ralph's my choice. Just because, but then the Glazers like some control, and he isn't about that.
yeah, I would take Favre or Koeman, honestly. And I know Koeman is going to be really unpopular as a choice. His football's not great, but I think he's competent. Like he's a safe pair of hands to the end of the season. I'd rather have Ronald Koeman, who has Premier League experience as well, by the way, for 6 months, than end up with somebody completely unproven like a Carragher or Fletcher for 6 months.
yeah, I'd agree with you on that. To be honest, yeah, I think we'll end it there. That was some good stuff. Obviously, it's sad podcast to do with leaving. Yeah, and it's sad that we had to do that. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and follow us elsewhere. But yeah, thank you very much for watching.
And
Peace.
on behalf of everyone at the Red Devils Den podcast, thank you so much for everything you've done for the club. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.